Hello students. In this video I am going to show you how to use a single vanishing point to draw things that are square and rectangular. The first thing we need to do is establish our horizon line. This counts as kind of the sky area and this counts as the ground area. And then we need to create a point that shows where everything will come together if it's square and rectangular and all facing the same direction if it's a grid. It's easier to do this than talk about it, so we're just going to start. I'm lining up my straight edge at the bottom of the paper so I can get a nice straight vertical. The vertical lines in this kind of drawing always stay vertical. Step number 2 is to head off to the vanishing point. Now you can draw all the way to the vanishing point like so, or you can, if you don't want to erase as much in a minute, you can just draw till you think the end, to the end of the shape you're making rather than going all the way there. So in that one I just drew to the end of the shape. Now what I usually call step number 3 is this, where we finish off the shape. We're doing what I call a flat screen TV in the desert, just standing there. So now I'm going to erase the extra bits, and you could consider this just your final step. And I'm going to erase the vanishing point, which I can see through. Okay, so now I have this kind of illusion of what a rectangle would look like if part of it was further away from you. I'm going to go ahead and make this wall three-dimensional by doing a perfect horizontal line right here at the top and the bottom. Now, if you think about it, this would probably be at an angle, but since the kind of drawing we're doing is called one-point perspective, we're just going to use a single vanishing point. So all the other shapes that are facing kind of straight at us will be horizontal. So now I have my basic structure, and it kind of looks like a building actually set in the desert because we can see this front shape. Some other things that I like people to know before we get going is how to do a cube, as if there were some sort of cube of butter sitting here in the desert. Now, cubes are not difficult, but you do need to be able to either draw with your straight edge a pretty good cube. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just kind of line my straight edge up to the edge of the paper so I'm getting those perfect verticals and horizontals. Now, I usually freehand my cubes before I get going, and then I sharpen them up with a straight edge. But for today, I'm just going to go ahead and draw my best with a straight edge. My experience with a straight edge is that I sometimes get things kind of the wrong shape if I'm focusing on these straight lines rather than the whole picture, but that's acceptable. Okay, to make a cube that looks like it's receding in space, I'm going to start from these 3 points. If it were a transparent cube, say made of glass or ice, then maybe I would draw the 4th one as well, but for now I'm just going to head off to my vanishing point. And again, you can go all the way there, but that's a lot of erasing to do, and sometimes the marks remain on your paper. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of make it as far back as I think I want this cube to go, which is not super far, but you know, kind of a butter-sized cube more or less. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick this line up because I know I don't need it. The lines are heading to that vanishing point. Now, one of the things you might remember is that if you're drawing a picture based on the idea that everything that's square and rectangular is set up on a grid, then you're going to definitely want to just have that single vanishing point for the objects that you're creating so that they will make sense together as well as look like they're receding back in space. So now I'm doing a parallel line to the horizon by lining my straight edge up at the edge of the paper. This is a line that people often kind of make a mistake on. I didn't draw this far enough out. Correct that right now. Is that they don't make that furthest line a horizontal. So the way I conceive this is that this box is step number 1, going to the vanishing point is step number 2, and finishing your work off is step number 3. Same deal here, this shape or this line is step number 1, these lines are step number 2, and step number 3 is finishing your shape off. Now there are many, many things you can do. A lot of people kind of like to do the famous line across the desert, so I'm going to do that kind of a version of that. But I personally don't love it when roads go all the way to the horizon line. So I'm just going to make mine a little narrower. And I'm just starting with step 2 because this is a thin shape, and step 1 is kind of already done for us just with the beginning edge of the page. Now I want to make my road turn. Now you could just make it wiggle off in the distance, go over a little hill or something. But we have this imaginary super flat landscape with a desert in it. I'm going to go ahead and make a little intersection or a left turn there. Now the last thing I want to show you how to do is how to make a row of freestanding objects in your desert. I'm going to go ahead and make I call it kind of some guidelines that show this is basically where my shape is going to be. What I want to do is make markers to draw freestanding objects. They could be fence posts, they could be anything. This tells me what the closest one would be, and this tells me how small to make the farthest one, and I'm not going to make them go that far off. I think I'll just do fence posts so you can kind of get the idea. So I'm just going to hang this from the top since my projector is getting in the way a little here. Okay, so I've lined that up and I've got my perfect vertical. And I'm just going to make some lines. The first few are going to be pretty far apart because they're close to us. They might have a lot of space. But then as they get further away from us, they also get closer together. The space is smaller in between them, or looks smaller at least. So we're creating this illusion of the 3D world that we live in by using this single vanishing point that was kind of discovered or developed, this kind of way of drawing in the 1450s, around there in Italy, by a gentleman named Filippo Brunelleschi, giving us this ability to draw very convincing looking objects standing on a plane. Now, you could make fence posts, however. These could be just markers. I want to make some wooden fence posts. They're old, they're ragged, but they're all pretty much the same height, so they're standing here, getting smaller as they get further away. And we're going to do some, little teeny ones out here in the distance. Now, you could do whatever you wanted. If you want to get rid of these guidelines, you could, and draw something else in there. You want to do some jagged old barbed wire, this is the perfect place for it. You want to do a sleek little bit of wire going in between them, that would work too. So I'm going to go ahead and do some sagging barbed wire, just so you can kind of get the idea that these are your basic structure, but they're not exactly your art. These give you the ability to create a realistic looking place that looks like the 3D world that we live in by using that vanishing point. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to put doors and windows on a building, just because these things often people want to know. So again, I'm following those 3 steps. I'm making sure my door goes above my eye line because unless it's for a door just intended for very small children, it would normally go above a person's eye level. So we are going to go off to the vanishing point. That's step 2. And step number 3 is to do a horizontal line at the farthest part of the door. And then you have kind of the basic idea of a door. All right, good luck.